Okay, I am going to go ahead and get started today because I have kind of a long-ish presentation today. So just to kind of get through it during the lunch hour. Um, Today we're going to talk about chainsaw safety and maintenance. And so I'm going to cover especially the considerations as women who run chainsaws. There's some things that we have to think about that men don't usually think about. So talking about those and talking about like weight and how to pick a saw that works for us. So we're going to cover all those things today. So in just a quick, if you're new with us today, Women Owning Woodland is our program that's being developed to provide learning opportunities to women woodland owners and enthusiasts. So you don't have to own woodlands to be involved. And then we also work towards field days, lunch and learns, and classes. And I usually have an upcoming screen and I haven't had a chance to update that. But on the topic of chainsaws, we're going to be offering, they're going to be mixed groups. So they're not WOW chainsaw opportunities. It will be mixed opportunities, but we will be having a chainsaw class in Southwest Missouri at the Southwest Center October 15th. And then we'll also be offering a chainsaw workshop at Woodland Research Farm, which is near St. James, Salem, kind of in between the two places. And that'll be on November 5th. So those are coming up. And then I'm hoping to offer a Women Owning Woodland timber sale workshop. It'll probably be a face-to-face one that'll be held at WordAct. So they recently had a timber sale, and it's a good chance for us to get to see that timber sale pretty fresh after it's been done, so folks can get an idea about it. So those are some things that are in the works. I just have to kind of get advertising and registration up for them. So I'm going to start right in, and I'm going to start by talking about PPE first. So the first one is a hard hat. So this is really important. In fact, probably, I won't even give percentages, but a large percentage of chainsaw injuries are not actually injury from the chainsaw itself, but from the trees or branches that are being felled, and they cause head injury. So a hard hat is really important. So as women, our heads tend to be smaller than men's. This can make it difficult to sometimes find a hard hat that fits. And we want to make sure that it can be tightened to fit our head snugly, so it stays on your head. So if you move your head side to side or front to back, that hard hat should stay on. So especially in the Ozarks and much of Missouri, it is hilly and we're kind of working in rough terrain. So you're going to be bending over and you're going to be walking up hills. So you want to make sure that hard hat is going to stay on no matter, what you're doing. Also important is that you clean that interior padding. And so inside the hard hat, there's usually kind of like foam squish that helps it fit better. There's also the adjustable plastic ring that helps it fit your head. And so you want to make sure that you clean this, especially if you wear makeup and then wear your hard hat and kind of sweat that makeup on there. Staph infections can result from dirty padding on the inside of that helmet. So after, every couple of uses, it doesn't hurt to take a Clorox wipe or an alcohol wipe and wipe down the inside of your hard hat. Additionally, hard hats do expire, and a lot of us, men and women, were guilty of have a hard hat. I paid for it and bought it, and I've only used it a handful of times because that's the number of times that I've run a chainsaw, and I really hate the idea of buying a new one. However, they do have maximum lifespans, and it is marked on the hard hat, very similar to a use by or sell by date. But you might think it's marked on there, but it's not actually marked on there. It's easily to find like you would think. So first you need to find out when your hard hat was manufactured. This is usually stamped onto the hard hat below the brim. And then flip your hard hat and take a look on the inside, and you should see something that looks like this. And so the number in the middle is the year of manufacturing. So it was 13. And then the arrow points to a month. So it's pointing to 5. So it was manufactured in May of 2013. And the standard lifespan for hard hats is usually about 3 years after manufacture. And this is because they get exposure to UV light when we have them outside. Over time, plastic will become more brittle, so it'll have less, provide less protection if something were to fall on it. And so just in general, this is something to think about, is that hard hats do expire. Hearing protection. This one is really important because chainsaws have a very long and loud noise that they make. And exposure to noise above 85 decibels can cause permanent hearing loss. So you can kind of look over here, where the chainsaw fits on that. And so here's 85, and chainsaws fall in that 100 to 125 decibels. So if you do not wear hearing protection while you run it, this can cause permanent hearing loss. And then just how long it causes to take a particular sound to cause damage. So here at about, here's saws. Chainsaws are anywhere up in this area. So 112, it takes less than a minute to cause permanent damage. So again, important that we have good hearing protection. And this can be, so in the chainsaw world, there are some helmets that have everything built into them. So it's a helmet, and then it has hearing protection that attaches to that. And then it also has a face shield, which is the next thing we're going to talk about, is how important that face shield or safety glasses are. So you can buy it all in one. If you're not going to use it on a regular basis, while it is convenient to have the chainsaw helmet, because of the replacement on the helmet, having that like 3 to 5 year lifespan, it might be more cost effective to buy your hearing protection and your eye protection separate, and then just having a hard hat that you wear, because then you can replace the hard hat with replacing everything all at once. So, and hearing protection can be, here's the example. So it can be the foam earplugs. It can be ear protection like we use for the firing range. It can be, again, here's the ones that are attached to your helmet. And this is one that has the face shield in it as well. So just something that is going to dull down the sound of that chainsaw. Protect your eardrums. Eye protection is the next one. So safety goggles block debris or sawdust. They do fog up with perspiration, which can cause more of a safety hazard. So this is where this hard hat with that mesh face shield. So this is completely aerated in mesh. It's easy to see through, but it also is completely open, so it's not going to fog up at all. So there is that usefulness. But again, otherwise, if you're thinking cost effective and you're not going to run a chainsaw all day, you're going to use it here and there for maybe cleaning up, fallen trees, or perhaps small work around the house, I would kind of go with eye protection, ear protection, and helmet separate. Just it helps save a little bit of money. If you're not worried about saving money, then these helmets are the best. They work great, and it's all included. And I have had good luck. So I have, don't usually recommend certain brands, but I have steel branded chaps and a helmet, and it does fit my head, which I find to be really useful as well. Also, if you're working out in the woods with a chainsaw, it's good to carry a couple bottles of emergency water, and this can be your emergency eye wash station should you get sawdust in your eyes. And I will say that even with eye protection, face protection, there's a good chance you'll still get sawdust in your eyes, because there's a lot of sawdust being pushed around. Gloves. This is one that I find hard to find gloves that fit. So women's hands are typically smaller than men's. So it's good to find a pair of gloves that properly fits. So we want to make sure that we have good grip on the chainsaw, of course, because it, can be dangerous if we don't have it under control. And we will be holding a handle and pressing a button while we run the chainsaw. So you want to make sure that you can bend your fingers easily and you can get a good grip on the handle of the chainsaw. You also want to make sure that the fingertips of the gloves do not extend too far beyond your fingers. So again, this is just extra stuff that can get caught in your saw. It can get caught under logs. You want to make sure that your gloves have a good fit with them. And I will say there's become more options of finding women's gloves. And typically, I always go with a good leather glove that's going to last and protect my hands from anything like that fall, like debris that comes up. It all, again, helps you with the grip. So there's some research that shows kind of that vibration of the chainsaw can cause nerve damage over time, and the gloves also help prevent that vibration of the chainsaw. So that's why they're a good thing to have. And then it also protects your hands from sawdust and other stuff that kind of flies up while you're running a chainsaw. Chaps, these again can be difficult to find depending on how tall or how short you are. So I'm 4'11", so finding chainsaw chaps that fit has been a little bit difficult, and I still have a little bit of extra, but you want to make sure that they aren't too loose on the waist or the legs. And mine even are a little bit bulkier than I would recommend, as far as I have a lot of kind of extra chap because of the shortness of my legs. You want to also make sure it fits around your waist and not too loosely, which this can also be complicated to find with women generally being more slender than men. Most of the chaps come with adjustable straps that can be tightened or loosened as we need. So there's, and you can't see the back, but on the back of these chaps, there's also buckles that can be adjusted so you can tighten it to your leg. They should cover your leg from hip to the top of your foot. I can tell you, I have no problem covering the top of my foot with my chaps because they are certainly long enough. And the proper length. So when you look at chap sizing, they'll give you inseams and out seams. And the proper length is determined by your out seam. So that is going to be from hip to the top of your foot. And so that's kind of how they size code it. And so here, if you're shopping for chaps and you see sizes like 32, 36, 40, those are not, it's not waist size. It is going to be out seam size that they are coding those with. So, and if you have had an incident where you're so chaps on the inside of here, they have tons and tons and tons of strands of, oftentimes it's Kevlar that's in there, and it's these fibrous strands. And so if you hit your chaps, it first cuts through this canvas outer part, and then all those fibers, they actually bind up in your chainsaw and turn it off. So it's not cutting anymore, and that's what protects your leg from the chainsaw. However, if you have cut through your chaps, then you want to replace them. So, and this is, again, probably second to the hat, this is one of the most important pieces of equipment that you want to use, because it is going to protect, if you look at the statistics from chainsaw injury, the majority of chainsaw cuts happen to our lower limbs. Not saying that they don't happen to other parts of the body, because we do have things like buck back on the chainsaw that we can end up with upper body injuries. But this, a lot of times we cut through things and then kind of hit the top of our leg, top of the calf. And so these will offer a lot of protection and definitely worth the investment. The other complaint I get a lot about chaps is that they are hot. I'd agree with that, but I would rather be uncomfortable than have some type of catastrophic injury. Foot protection. Sneakers or leather boots will not protect your feet from a moving chainsaw. Chainsaw boots provide the best protection as they provide a full foot coverage. And I will say that if you're running a chainsaw on a kind of irregular basis, so it's, once or twice a year, you can probably get away with leather boots. Just want to be cautious. You can also use steel-toed boots or steel toe covers. So they make these boots that have like a Kevlar bootie, which are liners that fit inside your boot. And so it's kind of like almost like a sock, but it's made of Kevlar, and it's gonna, again, provide protection for your feet as well. Hair, if you have long hair, being sure to pull it back into a ponytail or braid or some other arrangement that keeps it securely out of your way. So you don't want to have anything that's in your eyes that you're constantly trying to reach up and move out of your way, or that's impairing your vision while you're running the chainsaw. Ideally you should tuck it in your hard hat to ensure it does not have an opportunity to get caught in the saw or distract you while you're using your saw. Again, can sometimes be tricky to figure out how to fit hair into the helmet. I usually go with a ponytail or a low bun that I can still fit my hard hat over, but my hair is all completely pulled back and out of my face. Another consideration are undergarments. So sports bras or racerback bras provide comfort and sometimes make it easier for us to use our saw because they don't have straps that slide down our shoulders, and they're going to kind of provide a lot of support. And you want to pick ones that are not only comfortable, but that also prevent you from feeling the need to fidget or readjust while using your saw. So this can be a big distractor when running a chainsaw, especially if you're going to be running one, the majority of a day. And then good support bras can also help lighten the burden on your back while you're sawing. So there's, chainsaws are not light. Even the smaller sized ones, still that weight kind of adds up as you go through the day. So if you can add a little bit more support, that's definitely a help. What you should wear also, outer garments. So you want to make sure that you wear clothes that are comfortable, that you can move freely in, but they're not so baggy or loose that they'll interfere with your chainsaw operation. So jeans are always a good choice. They generally are comfortable enough that you can move around, but they also provide some protection, like on the backs of your legs from debris. Depending on what time of the woods time of the year you're in the woods, they can provide protection from insects, and they're pretty light. So if you are chainsawing like in July and August, you might want to consider wearing lighter clothing than denim, just because of the heat. But you do want to make sure that your legs are completely covered by some type of pants, and not wear shorts with your chaps, because you do want protection from things like flying sawdust, insects, that type of thing. This one's probably a no-brainer, but just in case, it's good to leave all your jewelry at home when you're planning saw work. So necklaces and bracelets can cause a distraction. They can get caught on tree limbs while you're cutting them or other vegetation, or even worse, they can get caught in the saw itself. Even small earrings, those earmuffs that we wear for hearing protection, can push that earring back into the back of your head, which can cause discomfort and pain, especially if you're wearing them for the majority of a day. And then metal rings on your fingers, they can become uncomfortable. So even with your gloves on, those rings can rub in certain places, and this can cause calluses. The other thing that can happen is, or that will happen particularly during the warmer months, is your fingers are going to swell. So when we run a chainsaw, our hands are a lot of times below heart level, and they are going to have some swelling, and that can cause those rings to get stuck on your fingers or other discomfort. So it's good to just leave all the jewelry at home when running the chainsaw. And again, here's just a picture of proper attire. So, and in this one she has on, and I should put it out there, they're just very expensive. There are actual chainsaw pants. So it is like a pair of pants that you wear, and it has built-in chaps on the front, which is what she has on in this picture. But these run like $300 to $500. So if you are not working in the woods every day, like a logger, for example, they may not be worth that investment. She also has on, you can see her gloves that she has, and then hearing, she does have a mask. It's up for the picture, but she has all the appropriate attire on for running a chainsaw. Thinking about chainsaw selection, so this can be important as far as the safety purposes and operation goes. There are some good choices for electric or corded chainsaws available. Steel actually has a battery operated chainsaw that can run them pretty much 4 to 5 hours at a time. So one of the biggest complaints about battery operated chainsaws at first was that they didn't, just like battery powered drills, cordless drills, they didn't run as long as we wanted them to. They have done a lot of upgrading. Unfortunately, also that leads to a bigger battery that can add to the weight of those cordless chainsaws. But there are some good ones that are out there, and they are good choices for, sometimes they're good choices for women who are running chainsaws, maybe for smaller trees around the house, perhaps clearing a tree that's fallen. They work well for if we're not going to go out and cut 100 trees down in a day. And some of the benefits is that they vibrate less, they're a little bit quieter. They generally are still lighter, even with those battery packs that can be heavy. They're also cleaner, so we don't have to put gasoline and oil mixtures into them. They will still have bar oil. So bar oil is what keeps the chain lubricated as it runs. So you will still have that, but you won't have the need for mixing gas and oil. They again are ideal for pruning and limbing small branches, kind of doing general work around the house. They work great for. The downfalls is that corded one. So if you have a corded chainsaw, this cannot be used outside in wet weather, and you have to have an outlet close by. So usually they have about 100-foot cord. So you would have to have a place to plug them in close by to where you're working. And then cordless models, it mentions the issue of sufficient battery life. I will say the newer ones are not so bad. So they usually have enough juice to last as long as we would want to use them. And there are some new models, again, that are pretty powerful, because that used to be the thing also with corded or electric chainsaws, is having enough power to cut through larger things. And I will say that the latest and greatest that I've seen are pretty powerful and work pretty well. Gas chainsaws, on the other hand, so they generally cut faster, and they can be used anywhere outside, even in rain or snow. They are heavier and noisier than the electric models. And then most of them are a 2-cycle engine. And so you have to mix oil with your gasoline and make sure that you store that fuel safely in an approved container that's labeled, because you don't want to mix up that 2-cycle mix with any of your other gas tanks, like for a lawnmower, for example. So you want to make sure it's clearly marked. And then if you use your chainsaw infrequently, you should drain the fuel tank and add stabilizer mixture, because if the oil and gas mixture sits in your chainsaw for a long period of time without being heated up or burned in the chainsaw, this can cause deposits on your carburetor, which can lead to it running rough down the road or not running at all, and you having to take it in to be cleaned. So just some things to kind of think about if you're debating between the two, kind of a comparison. So, and electric or corded chainsaws, they still have the other kind of maintenance requirements that you would with a gas chainsaw, though. So chains still need to be sharpened. The bar oil still has to be added. So that's the same between both of these. Thinking about weight, chainsaws can get heavy for anyone. And so the weight of a chainsaw is nearly always specified for the power head only because guide bars. So this piece here is that long metal frame. That's a guide bar. And then this is the chain of the chainsaw. And so when you look at the weight, if you were to like shop chainsaws online or go to the store and look, it would give you the weight of the power head because these guide bars can be changed out and various sizes are going to give different weights. But you generally could add with your bar and chain another 1.5 to 2 pounds. And then a pint of fuel will add another pound or so to the weight of your gas saw. So when you look at that weight, you want to add between 2.5 and 3 pounds to account for the guide bar and for the gas. What size guide bar do I need? So we try to match that guide bar to the type of job you expect to do most often. And I will say that a lot of our chainsaws also these days you can switch out your guide bars. So I have a chainsaw, it is a gas powered chainsaw, and it has the capability, I think I can put anything from a 14 up to a 20-inch bar on it. I did purchase a 16-inch bar and an 18-inch bar, and those are the two that I use most commonly, and that would cut down most trees that I would feel comfortable cutting down. Anything larger, and you can, if you think about it, you can actually cut a larger tree than what your bar length is, because you can cut on both sides of the tree if you're actually felling it. And then again, 16, 18, most branches are not going to be any larger than that. So it's, works well. If you think you're not even going to like cut any larger trees, and maybe it's just something you're going to use for limbing trees or cutting small trees, a lightweight chainsaw with a bar of 14 inches or less is a good choice. If you're going to be doing more frequent log cutting and felling of small to medium trees, a mid-sized chainsaw with 14 to 20 inches is a good choice for that. And then anything larger than 20 inches is going to be something that our professional loggers are going to use, and probably a landowner or for a woodland enthusiast that helps with trail maintenance, we're not going to use those great big chainsaws. That's going to be something that a professional logger is going to use. So just again, if you're shopping and thinking about what will work good for you, those are kind of the recommended sizes. Safety features. So all new chainsaws that you buy, if they are not like a professional chainsaw, but kind of one that's meant for landowners, homeowners, they feature a low kickback or safety chain, and they minimize risk of kickback, but don't eliminate it completely. And that's something we talk about also when we talk about using chainsaws is where we cut to avoid that kickback zone. These are required on consumer saws, but not professional saws. And a blue label means that it is a low kickback chain, and a yellow label means professional. And this is one that just essentially it is going to have some characteristics to it. So this is the kickback zone. So oftentimes, if this is the part of the saw that hits a piece of wood you're trying to cut through, it is going to toss that kind of have the way the saw moves is going to hit it, so it pushes it back towards you. And this can be dangerous because, as you can see in this picture, when it kicks back, it can fly up and hit your head, hit your face, and sometimes hit your shoulder. So we do want to try and prevent as much of that as we can. And it does minimize, it's less of a kickback with these safety chains than if we did not have them. Some other features, safety features that when you're looking at chainsaws that you want to make sure they have. First one is that safety chain. The second one is a wraparound front handle. So this here is that wraparound front handle, and this is what you're going to hold on to. So one handle, hold on with that, and depending if you're left-handed or right-handed. So that's usually your non-dominant hand is going to hold that wraparound front handle, and then your dominant hand is going to hold the back handle and run the button to start the saw. So you want to make sure you have that. That's going to provide a good, valuable support for supporting the saw, and it really provides you the ability to hold the chainsaw a couple different angles. So, and it's hard to see, it's not really in 3D, but this handle, it attaches on that side and it attaches below, and this is actually all open. So you can hold your chainsaw. So if I am felling a tree, I will get down and I, have one hand on that back handle, and then I can actually turn my chainsaw sideways so I can run it into that tree, and that handle provides me support to hold it at that angle. So that's good. And then the C-shaped rear handle, again, that's important. And we want to make sure that this fits in our hand pretty well, because this can, again, if we're going to run it for a long period of time, it can cause discomfort to my hand. This front hand guard, so that's what this is. This is also, it's labeled on this one up here, but this is also attached to what we call the chain brake. And so if your chainsaw does kick back, this plastic handle will hit your hand that is sitting here. And when it hits it, it will trigger that, push that handle forward, and that will turn off the chain, so called the chain brake. So it'll turn off automatically our chain. So that's a very important feature to have. And then the last one is a throttle trigger lockout. So this is on the top. And so if our hand slips off of that one and maybe the button is still going, it'll turn off our saw for us as well. Chainsaw maintenance. So this is an important part to keeping our chainsaws safe for us to use them. The biggest and most common maintenance we're going to do is sharpening the chain. And this is something, it can be a little overwhelming to think about, but oftentimes, and I keep saying one of these days, I'm gonna do just a class on how to sharpen the chain of a chainsaw. This can be done by us, so we can do it ourselves. There's some equipment that goes with it, or it is something that we can actually, many of our dealers of chainsaws, they also offer a chain sharpening service. So you can take your chain into the store and have them sharpen it. So either way is a great choice. It's not as complicated. So I was really overwhelmed about thinking about how to sharpen a chain myself. And then it's not as bad. So there's some really good tools out there that help us do it correctly if you're interested in doing it yourself. Correcting chain tension. So this chain that's on the bar, it can't be too tight or it will not run freely around our bar. And if that's the case, then the chain can fall off, which can be dangerous and can just be a hindrance to our day. If it is too tight, it'll restrict it and it won't run at all. So we want to make sure that that's at the correct tension. Proper lubrication. So this is moving around this bar very, very fast, which creates quite a bit of heat and friction. And so lubrication of that is crucial. And then making sure all our safety equipment is functioning. So that's an important piece of our maintenance. So sharpening the chain. How do I know when to sharpen the chain? If your saw is cutting crooked, this is an indication that it needs sharpened, and that because there's two teeth. So there's like pulling teeth, and they're the ones that kind of pull sawdust out, and then there's pushing teeth, and they are kind of pushing that sawdust out. And so if one side is like pushing teeth are not as sharp as the pulling teeth, then it'll start to cut at crooked edges. Also, if your chainsaw is producing a really, really fine sawdust instead of chips, this means that it's not cutting as much with each time that tooth goes by, and probably needs sharpened. If you have to press down really hard to keep cutting, Another good indication that a chain needs sharpening. And then if you smell burnt wood, so instead of having really sharp teeth that are cutting through that wood very smoothly, if it's having to work at it, it will also cause so much heat that the wood will have a burnt smell. Another indication that your chain needs sharpening. Correct chain tension. So we want to check the chain tension regularly. So again, if it's too loose, it'll come off. If it's too tight, the chain will bind and overheat. All chains stretch with use and require periodic retensioning. And I should add a picture to this. When you get a chainsaw, it usually comes with a tool that kind of looks like half screwdriver, half socket. And this is usually what you can use. And there's just actually a hole on the side, and that's the tensioning adjustment. And you can use that tool to adjust the tension without, you don't take anything apart. It's really easy. And so this, again, one way, it usually has arrows, and it says if you turn this way, it's going to tighten it. If you turn this way, it's going to loosen it. So oftentimes we start and that chain is going to heat up. And when metal heats up, it increases in size a little bit and stretches just a little bit. And so after your first half hour or so of cutting, it's a good time to stop and check the guide bar and this chain and see if you need to tighten it up anymore. Most manufacturers recommend a cold chain be tightened where the chain tie straps hang away from the bar. So this is a really fancy way of saying like that chain should only have about 1/32 of an inch space between it and the bar. And then a warm chain can be adjusted to a 1/8 inch gap. We don't want them to be too tight. And if you're running a chainsaw, so most chainsaws do not have what they call a sprocket nose tip. Most of them are just an open, like a smooth bar. But if you are running, there are some chainsaws that on the nose tip of the bar, it has sprockets that are in there that fit into your chain. And if you're using that type of chainsaw, you want to make sure that has a little bit tighter fit of the chain. Proper lubrication. So again, you want to make sure you check your manufacturer's directions on how and where oil goes, but this does prolong a chain's useful life. In the summer, you want to use the SAE 30 or bar and chain oil. And in the winter, use SAE 10 or bar and chain oil. And so in the summer, it's warmer outside, the air temperature is warmer. And so this SAE 30 is going to have, it's a little bit thicker, which we don't have to worry about it being thicker because it is going to be warm air temperature. The SAE 10 is going to have a higher viscosity. And so when cold weather, it's still going to stay pretty viscous, which is going to allow that chain to move smoothly. As a general rule, bar and chain oil, again, unless you're going through a lot of trees and cutting day after day, bar and chain oil is not too expensive for a bottle of it that will probably last you multiple seasons. I don't, again, run into this with landowners that kind of use their chainsaws casually as we do with professional loggers, but you don't want to use crankcase or other reclaimed oil because waste oils have, they generally tend to have dirt in them that can reduce the lubricating properties, and that can corrode the oil pump that pumps that bar and chain oil into the groove that's on the bar. If your bar oiling mechanism is not operating properly, it can cause damage to the chain and the bar pretty quickly. So some things to look for if it's not being properly lubricated is if the chain smokes while it's operating, it does not have enough lubrication. That means that you have some kind of metal on metal action and it's getting very hot. So what oil you have there is smoking. when the saw is started, you can make sure that the oil pump is functioning and the oil is lubricating the bar by holding the saw tip above a light covered surface and accelerating the engine. If it's operating properly, there should be just a little bit of oil splatter. If it doesn't splatter off any oil, this means that none is being pushed out to lubricate that. And so if this is the case, you want to turn off the saw, remove the guide bar, and check that chain oil discharge slot. So it is like a kind of a small hole that the oil comes out of, and it does sometimes fill with sawdust and other dirt, and it can become clogged, which can cause it to not oil properly. Functioning safety equipment, as mentioned, the chain brake is designed to stop that chain almost instantaneously. And so one thing you can do is when you start up your saw, you can press the button and see that the chain is moving properly, and then you can turn, click that brake forward, and that chain brake actually works kind of like a safety would on a firearm. If it's pushed forward, you aren't going to be able to you can press the button, it'll rev up the engine, but the chain is not going to move, and then you can pull that back, and that's going to allow the chain to move freely. So it's an important safety feature because say I'm cutting limbs and I don't necessarily, and I didn't talk about starting a chainsaw today, but if it is a gas powered chainsaw, most of those are going to be pull start, which can be a little more trying if you are not of a lot of upper body strength. And so if I'm working, I don't like to turn my chainsaw completely off each and every time, like I move from one area to the next, or perhaps I need to move logs out of the way so I can cut some other part of the tree. So that chain brake, if I click it forward, this is going to prevent that chainsaw. If it were to get bumped, it won't start the chain because it has its safety on. If your chain brake is not working properly or it seems to be having issues, this is something that you definitely should take to a trained service technician, since it is such a critical safety piece. And then supplies. So just anytime we're out in the woods working with chainsaws, it's good to have wrenches to fit all the nuts and lugs on your saw, screwdrivers, a round file and a file guide to touch up. So not to actually completely sharpen our chain, but we can add a few touch-ups, which will, again, sharpen just a little bit so it'll run well. A flat file and a depth gauge tool for setting the proper cutting depth, and then a spare spark plug and your owner's manual. And I would recommend that you put your owner's manual in a zippered plastic bag, and this keeps it from getting dirty with oil or debris, or getting wet if we're out working in the rain. And then it's always good to have chop towels or similar types of cloth with you that can act as a rag, because sometimes the chainsaws can be quite dirty, and a little bit of cleaning can help them run better. So those are good to have. I also should say that if you're going to be running a chainsaw for an extended period of time, having things, first aid kit can also be useful to have on hand. So again, I won't fix any of the big injuries that are could potentially happen with running a chainsaw, but there are other things like, say I've caught my finger on my chainsaw chain a few times, and while it doesn't cause any major damage, it does cause a little bit of a cut, and it helps to have that first aid kit present. And that is it for today. I told you this one was a little bit longer. Any questions for me?
I just have a comment.
Yes.
I did get a battery chainsaw.
And how do you like it?
I really like it because I just do small jobs. I don't do the large things, and just to push a button, it's great. and I don't stay out there for 4 to 5 hours. I just have to pace myself. So, the battery, I think it's like it could go 2 hours, because it's a smaller saw. I think it's a 20-inch, but I like that. For me, starting it was really hard. I had a smaller steel and it was getting hard. So just a comment there. And oh, you mentioned how the oil feed could get clogged.
Mm-hmm.
Where exactly is that on the chainsaw? Is there a way you could point that out or on your?
Yes. Let me see if I can pull up it's so you do have to open it up so you can see the whole length of the bar. And it's usually and it does vary from brand to brand.
So you have to take the cover off.
You do have to take the cover off.
Oh.
It is usually not. Let's see if I can find you a good picture. I'm going to share my screen again real fast. Is yours a steel battery powered one? So there's usually a place to add your, like, kind of on the bottom part of the bar. You can add the bar oil there, but then there's usually a hole that's kind of in the side. And I'm trying to find a good diagram of that to share with you. And that is where it actually comes out and it oils that space between your bar and your chain. I might have to take a picture of my own and send it your way because I'm not finding a great
Okay.
picture. But is yours a steel?
Actually, it's the blue from Lowe's. I can't think of the brand.
Okay. It's probably in a similar place, and I can at least show you what it looks like because it's not always super obvious what you're looking at.
Oh, cobalt is what
Cobalt.
it is.
Okay. So, and if anyone is like super interested in running a chainsaw on a regular basis, I did have the opportunity to go through the professional timber harvester training last summer, and it's 5 days. It's usually kind of spread out over a month, so they usually have like 2 days of class, and then you have a break. And what they hope is that you'll kind of try out your skills, and then they have a day of ecology, and then they come back and they do 2 more days. But it covers, kind of everything from sharpening the chainsaw to properly directionally felling trees. And so again, it's a little bit costly, but if you think you're going to run a chainsaw on a regular basis, it's definitely worthwhile. So just something to think about as well. All right. Well, if there's not any other questions today, I won't take any more of your time. But next week, we'll be talking about invasive species. I try to talk about invasive species probably once per quarter, just because it's an important topic, and it's always good for us all to be on the lookout for new invasive species. Say MDC just released some information asking us to be on the lookout for Asian longhorn beetles because there's some concern that that invasive species is on the move. So it's always good to kind of cover some of those on a regular basis so we all do our due diligence and keep an eye out for it. All right. Have a great day.
Thanks.
No problem. Thank you.